Hi everyone, welcome to the IoT Hero Show, my weekly showcase of thought leadership in the Internet of Things. My name is Tom Raftery, I'm the Global IoT Evangelist for SAP, and now, on with the show. Hi everyone, welcome to the IoT Hero Show. My name is Tom Raftery, I'm Global IoT Evangelist for SAP, and with me on the show today I have Vijay. Vijay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks Tom. Tom, my name is Vijay Anand. I head the practice for Internet of Things globally in Wipro, spanning across all the different verticals that we work in. I'm part of what we call as a Wipro Digital organization, which is a part of the mothership and is responsible for for running the digital mandates of our customers all the way from strategy to design to engineering to execution. So that's very briefly me.
Okay, and can you, for anyone who's unfamiliar with Wipro, can you talk a little bit about Wipro? I know you're an old company in technological terms, at least, going back to the 40s, I think, and coming out of the palm oil industry. So it's an unusual journey.
You're very right. So we probably started off as a sunflower oil, in fact, company, quite a long time back. We've come a long way since then. I'm part of what we call as the technology services organization, right?
Yeah.
We also have other parts of Wipro which are into consumer products. We also have a business which is into manufacturing industrial products like pistons. So it's a pretty diversified business that we have. And I'm part of the Wipro Limited organization, which is the technology wing of Wipro. We are a business and services providing organization. We work across primarily 6 verticals. We are organized as 6 verticals, which is around manufacturing and high tech, healthcare and life sciences. We have retail, consumer goods, government, all of that, media coming into one business unit or one vertical. We have CSP, which is our communication service providers. Then we have, what did I leave out? Yeah. Then we have ENU, which is energy, natural gases, and utilities. So these are the different verticals that we operate in.
Okay.
And sorry, I missed out financial services, BFSI. So those are the 6 verticals that we operate in. And then we have what we call as the horizontals, which span across all of these different verticals and provide the key skills and the key capabilities across all of these different verticals, which could be around product engineering services, it could be your analytics services or business operation services, etc., which are agnostic of the vertical to some extent, but then kind of feeding into all of these different verticals.
And you have about 170,000 employees, is that correct?
We have 170,000 employees globally.
Wow.
We have operations in about 100 odd countries today.
That's impressive. And you're kind of heading up the digital organization, doing a lot of the stuff around IoT across all the verticals. That's right?
Absolutely. I'm heading the IoT practice within the digital organization. The digital organization goes beyond IoT. Okay. There are other building blocks that we bring into digital as an end-to-end enabler. And I head the IoT practice for Wipro Digital as an organization.
So you must have seen some fantastic use cases of IoT in the various verticals. And I mean, I think that would be really interesting for people to hear because for a lot of the shows that we've had so far on the IoT Hero Show, we've had distinct verticals, but you span verticals. So can you talk to us about some of the use cases of IoT in the different verticals that you've come across, the ones that would be most interesting or most useful for people to learn from?
Well, definitely. I should say I have had my share of hearing a lot of problems and then trying to solve those problems in the 8 or 9 years that I've been in the space. And I've gone through all those different names that this connected ecosystem has gone through, right? We started off with telemetry, telematics, M2M, IoT. So it's new names that keep coming in. But the core of it is essentially the same. How do you kind of connect assets in the field and leverage the data from these different connected assets in terms of creating business value? So that's the overarching objective that any of these initiatives would have.
Agreed.
So you're very right. I've personally been involved in multiple different industries, multiple different use cases. Manufacturing has been key for me that way. Manufacturing, oil and gas, healthcare, retail, healthcare, your OEM space, and your patient monitoring space. So all these areas have been very interesting, and a lot of use cases coming in. In the manufacturing space, let me take a couple of them. I think if I started talking about all of these, it's going to take me a day to finish. But let's probably do manufacturing. A couple of interesting ones. We've essentially talked about industrial IoT, which is predominantly focused around how do you improve your operations, your productivity, your quality within the manufacturing facility. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of manufacturing that we have essentially talked about is aftermarket. So once your finished good has actually gone out into the market, how do you kind of leverage the connectedness of these end products in terms of helping in upsell opportunities, cross-sell opportunities, or providing proactive maintenance on these end products, etc. Right?
Sure.
But what I've also found as we went through this journey is how do we leverage both the all the kind of insights that we could actually get from the manufacturing floor, mash it up with all the information that we could probably get from these end products which are out there in the field, bring both of those information together so that you could influence both your aftermarket and your production in such a way that they are kind of complementing each other in terms of the value that they could create. So just to kind of give you an example, right?
Yep, great.
This is with one of my industrial process engineering customer who's into the space of manufacturing welding equipment and welding consumables, right? Now, essentially, they have a problem of perceived quality issues, right? So, what is the quality issue? A customer would probably come in and say that okay, let me take a step back. When you're talking about a consumable in a welding industry, it's all about those aluminum wires, the steel wires, the electrodes, etc., that are used in terms of the welding, the consumables.
Okay.
So this was an organization which used to get frequent feedbacks around the quality of the consumables themselves, which had a whole lot of kind of cascading impacts both on their consumer business and their equipment business. The challenge was essentially they didn't know whether the problem was with the consumable or was it a problem with the way the consumable was being used by the end customers.
Okay.
Right? So it's a core business problem, nothing to do with connected, nothing to do with IoT.
Sure.
So I definitely need to have the aspects of industrial IoT, the use cases that I talked about from a manufacturing facility perspective, but I also need to get real-time information about how the consumable is being used by the end equipment. If I could get both the information together, then I can bring out a very clear chart to say, hey, customer, the complaint or the feedback that you have essentially come up with is not because of the manufacturing problem. It's actually because of the way you were using the consumable. You had to use it with a particular voltage, and when you used it, the voltage was much lesser. You had to hold the gun in a particular angle. Your gun was not in that particular angle, so that's the reason you have a bad weld out there, and it's not a problem with the wire itself. At the same time, when you get all of those parameters, you also can understand if everything was right from the customer's perspective, the way he was doing the welding, then you kind of relate it back into the manufacturing process when that particular consumable was being manufactured, right? Because that's all connected and you get all the data out. Say, hey, now this batch is a problem. Now I need to find out all the process parameters that were prevalent at that point of time when I was actually manufacturing this particular batch, and then use this as a feedback into my improvement of the processes. So it's just not about industrial IoT from a perspective of improving the processes within the shop floor, nor is it about just monitoring all of those equipments which are out there in the field. How do we kind of bring all of this together in terms of creating a much better overarching kind of a value for the end customers? I think that's one example that I keep talking about.
So it's taking away the guesswork. It's taking
away the guesswork,
and it's all the decisions are made based purely on data.
Absolutely. So it's all data driven. Yeah. And you would have similar examples across other verticals too. But probably before going, since I'm on this particular topic, and before going into a different use case and a different vertical, the other aspect that also comes in when we are talking about connectedness and leveraging the data you're going to be as successful as your solution being accepted by the stakeholders who form the leaf of that value chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could have this conversation with the chief manufacturing officer, if I can call that, right? The guy who is responsible for the production, the guy who's actually looking at it and say, hey, I'll improve your production by probably 10%. I'll reduce your quality complaints by probably 5% or 6%. Excellent conversations to have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm bringing in all of these connected aspects and IoT and all of that, and it's up to that the operations engineer or the supervisor or the guy who's probably driving the forklift at the shop floor, for him to accept the change in the process, the new kind of technologies that I'm bringing in, for him to accept that and leverage that so that I can really see that 5% benefit and the 10% benefit that I started off with.
Sure.
So it's just not about the business value. It's just not about bringing a whole lot of connected technology. It's also about a human-centric design, as I like to call it, right?
Okay.
How do I take a bottom-up approach to the value and create a human-centric design, keeping in mind who are going to be that end leaf stakeholders who are going to leverage that and have to accept it to actually do it.
Yeah.
Again, an example, right, for the same customer. So I was in one of their in factories somewhere. It was about 200 kilometers from proper Poland, so they have a lot of factories over there, right? Now, so I said, okay, let me go and find out why do they have a quality problem. So what is it that is giving this quality problem? So as I go walk through the shop floor, I actually see one aged gentleman, right? White hair, is probably around 65, 68. Now, this gentleman is walking along a wall where there are barrels of chemicals which are stacked out there. So he puts his finger into one of the barrels, takes out a little chemical, does that, and says, "This is rejected, will not go into production." Goes to the next barrel. We're talking about we're talking about technologies which probably are going to change the world. But when you get into the reality, this is what the reality is. You take a step from there, right?
Okay.
He puts his fingers into the next one and says, "Hey, this will go into production." So that's how some of these things happen, right? So I said, if I'm going to bring in all of these technologies, sensors, I'll probably give a tablet to this 65, 68-year-old gentleman, white-haired man, and say, hey, everything that you've been doing the last 50 years is wrong. I'll give you a tablet. I'll put all these sensors in your barrels. You'll start doing it. You'll look at me as if I'm mad.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
So technology is great. Business value conversations are great. But I need to keep in mind that 68-year-old man and that he has to accept everything that I bring in and then take that approach. This comes together, and that's where any success of a use case in the space of IoT is going to happen. And that's the kind of model that you need to get into.
Yeah. So it's
long answer.
Yeah. No, but you bring up a fascinating point. Sometimes the technology is easier to change than the people.
Absolutely. So that's kind of it. And the oil and gas industry has presented its own kind of challenges in terms of the use cases, especially when you're kind of in the onshore, in the rigs, essentially.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest challenges is, of course, for them around the security of their people, because we acknowledge, we don't acknowledge. The reality of the industry is that a whole lot of people go missing, either because they fall off the rig when we're talking about offshore rigs,
wow,
or since they're contracted, essentially when they're going from the offshore rig onto the land, they actually jump ship and go away. They're all contract employees.
right?
Or when they land, they essentially vanish from the shore. But the crux of it is, as a business, the oil company essentially has an insurance aspect to all of these. So the people go missing, the premium of these oil companies go multifold, and it's a huge kind of part of their operational expense for them, right?
Wow.
So a classic example is, how do we monitor our people, especially when they are in the rigs or when they are moving around? And also from a perspective, if there is actually a genuine accident and somebody falls off from the rig, how do I locate? Because we're talking about mid-sea, the currents are extremely high.
Yeah.
So how do I locate that individual under the sea and I can actually save him before something drastic happens?
Yeah.
Which is also going to affect my business parameters out there. So that's again a classic example of how IoT could help an industry a classic age-old traditional industry like oil and gas. Right? A couple of other examples could be in the space of say healthcare. Now, healthcare we would probably split into two broad buckets, right?
Uh-huh.
One is your healthcare OEM side of things. The other one would be the healthcare patient monitoring side of things. So on the OEM side is where we see a whole lot of traction. As Wipro, I think we've built solutions around both the spaces. So both the markets are equally important for us. But in terms of the market itself and the industry maturing, we probably see the B2B business, which is the OEM business, which is probably at a point now where they want to experiment and probably take some of these things forward rather than the patient monitoring side of things, which is still a little bit slow,
Yep.
possibly because of the commercial models. I mean, the aspects around who is going to pay for the services is still nobody has an answer for that, right?
Yeah, still fluid.
So that's it. And so from a healthcare OEM perspective, we work with a whole lot of healthcare equipment manufacturers.
Okay.
It could be the huge ones like your X-ray machines, your genome sequencing machines, your scanning machines, etc. The use cases for all of these are broadly again under two categories. One is, of course, the consumables. All of these equipments come with consumables, and all of these different OEMs, their business model is both the equipment and the consumables which go into the equipment. So they have a sustained revenue coming from those consumables.
Okay.
The equipment themselves are a one-time sell, right? So it's sold, and they're not going to sell the same equipment multiple times to the same customer.
Sure.
So once it's sold, they want to have them as captive in terms of selling the consumables across to them.
Yeah.
So predominantly the use cases there are in terms of how do I get to know when a consumable refill needs to happen? What is the inventory level? And ensure that my sales guy, when I say the OEM sales guy, are essentially sitting in front of the customer even before the end of life of that particular consumable, or there is an inventory shortfall which is happening. So that's one predominant use case from a healthcare OEM perspective. The other is around predictive maintenance to ensure the uptime of these equipment sensors, because we're talking about multi-million huge machines. It could be your scanning, MRI scanners, and all of these kind of machines are there. And there are SLAs which are associated with these kind of equipments, and there are penalties associated with that. So how do you kind of work with that? So that's one. We also work with the likes of smaller equipments. It could be your glucometers, or it could be your home dialysis machines, etc. Right? So how do you make them connected? And you're providing services on top of value services on top of these machines which are already connected and which is probably at the end user's home. How do you kind of provide more services and more revenue streams leveraged out of that?
Yeah.
A common theme across any of these different kind of use cases and different kind of services, a trend that we are essentially seeing is that everyone wants to move away from just being an OEM or selling equipment or hardware and into a model where they're actually selling value, right?
Okay.
I was with a customer a couple of months back who is into the business of lighting. They manufacture different kinds of LED bulbs, LED fixtures, and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So they've been in the traditional business for a long time. They do that. Their core business is that. But they also realize that as the technology is improving, the number of bulbs that we used to buy 20 years back versus the number of bulbs that we buy today,
yeah,
there's a huge difference, right? Because these don't probably go back for 5 years, 10 years, etc. So you can't have a sustainable business by just selling those bulbs out there.
Yeah.
So we're kind of having conversations with them where we get into a model of lighting as a service, right? So you don't sell bulbs anymore, right? What you sell is, you go to a huge facility like this, you go to a Wipro, you go to anyone out there and say, hey, forget about the infrastructure, forget about the bulbs, forget about the BMSs that you need, the connectedness, etc. We'll sell you lumens. We'll ensure that based on your profile. Yeah. So that's conversation which is happening now,
wow.
right?
Wow.
Sell you lumens. We'll sell you lumens based on your profile, right?
Right.
When you say based on your profile, if it is a mall, if it is a retail store, we'll ensure that based on the number of people out there, your humans are adjusting by themselves, right? If you're 100 people, this is the kind of human you'll have. If this is this, then you'll have. Once you've kind of got into that kind of a model, you also say that we'll provide you humans based on your mood, right? So if there is a specific area which is all about, say, television, and the kind of people who actually come to view that are probably, say, 18 years to 22 years. I'm just taking some examples here.
Yep.
And you have another area which is all about microwave ovens, and it's usually ladies between the age of 30 to 32 years. We'll actually create profiles of each of these locations, and we'll provide you lumens based on the profile of that particular zone or the kind of people who are out there. And we're giving that as a service, so it's not fixed. So tomorrow you decide that, yeah, you want to completely restructure. It doesn't affect us because we're providing that as a service, and we'll provide that as a service for you. So the whole concept of how businesses are transforming themselves, moving away from the traditional way of doing business into more value-based selling.
Yeah.
I think that's the core to it. I mean, everything that we talk about, predictive maintenances, cross-sell, upsell, these are all building blocks into it. And probably that's the first conversation that you might have with an enterprise in terms of helping them realize what the benefits of the connected world are. But then once you get into it and they start seeing the real value out of it, then you get into a much more holistic conversation, which is all about moving them away from their conventional business models into a much more futuristic digital business model, if I can call that.
Sure. I'm always curious with these conversations when people are going from a CapEx model to an as a service OpEx model. Long term, does it work out cheaper for the end user, or is it just it's amortized over a longer period of time, the same amount?
There are multiple different models. So if you're looking at it from a provider's perspective, if you're looking at a likes of a Wipro, which is actually providing these services, we work in multiple different models. One classic example is a service that we call as Eco Energy, right? Eco Energy as a service is all about it's energy as a service. So we work with some of the largest facilities. The idea essentially is, so there are multiple different customers, but across this base of customers, the underlying theme is that we'll help you reduce your energy consumption. So today your energy cost is say 2 million. And believe me, in a lot of these retail stores, the maximum operational cost is in terms of energy. And within energy, it is on HVAC and lighting. Those are the two big contributing factors into operational costs from an electricity perspective. So the conversations that we have is, hey, we'll work as partners out here. We'll help you reduce your energy consumption and thereby reduce your energy costs. And that's an outcome we'll deliver. And based on that outcome, you kind of compensate us based on the reduction that we have actually caused of your energy costs.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And this is a model. So just to kind of answer your question on you're hearing this conversation, we actually started off this conversation almost 4 years back. The Eco Energy service, we launched it about 4 years back, successful service that we have run. And a proof of that essentially is that that entire business was bought just about a month back by an external company. So it's diversing away from us, from Wipro.
Sure.
But that's something that we created about 4 years back and a very successful business that we've been running, energy as a service.
Wow, fantastic. Vijay, we're coming to the end of the show. We're running out of time, unfortunately. It's been a great conversation. For anyone who cares to follow up with you or is interested in what you're doing or in Wipro, where should they go to find out more?
So if you want to personally contact me, you can, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can search for V R Vijay Anand in LinkedIn and you would get me.
Okay.
We have a lot of these case studies and much more in our Wipro Digital portal. So that is www.wiprodigital.com. So you could actually go in there and you'll see a lot of these stories and much more of these in our portal. And the portal also has mine and my peers' contact email IDs for you to reach out. So it's all there out there at wiprodigital.com.
Fantastic. Vijay, that's been great. Thanks a million for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Tom. It was my pleasure.